What are thin value bets in poker strategy? Have you ever wondered how to make the most out of a hand that isn't quite strong enough for a big bet? Let's talk about thin value bets in poker strategy. A thin value bet is a wager made with a hand that is only marginally strong. You expect to win the pot just over 50% of the time if your opponent decides to call. This is different from standard value bets, where you have a clearly strong hand. Thin value bets aim to extract small but steady profits by betting in situations where your opponent might call with slightly worse hands. These bets usually happen post-flop, often on the river. This is when you assess that your opponent's calling range includes enough weaker hands to make your bet worthwhile, even if your hand is not that strong. The key to making successful thin value bets is to read your opponent's range accurately. You need to estimate what hands they might call with and ensure that there are enough worse hands in their range to justify your bet. For example, if you hold a hand like Queen-Jack on a board and your opponent checks on the river, you might think they could call with hands like Queen-10 or 9-8. A small bet in this case can be profitable, even though your hand is only marginally better. This works because your opponent's calling range is flexible enough to include worse hands that make your bet a good idea. Thin value bets are particularly effective when your perceived betting range includes many bluffs. When opponents think you might be bluffing, they are more likely to call with weaker hands. This allows you to gain thin value from hands that might otherwise be too weak to bet for value. To make effective thin value bets, you should follow a few steps. First, assign a realistic range of hands that your opponent might call based on their previous actions. Next, evaluate how many hands in that range you actually beat if they call your bet. Finally, bet an amount that encourages calls from worse hands without risking too much of your stack. This strategy requires careful thought about both your hand and your opponent's tendencies. Betting too thinly without proper range reading can lead to missed opportunities or being taken advantage of. However, when done correctly, thin value betting helps you maximize your winnings by extracting extra chips from opponents who call with slightly worse hands.